Welcome to the Smoke and Flames post-race overreaction show. I'm Britt. This is Rocco.
What's up?
So right off the bat, we're at Martinsville STP 500. What was your initial reaction to the race?
You know, this race was really fun to watch. I'm happy that we're finally back to short track racing.
Yep.
And short track at its best form, where it's, just rubbing around, bumping around, doing all the good stuff.
I mean, there wasn't a car that didn't have damage at the end of the race.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was
great.
great.
But I mean,
I
the
loved
same thing
it.
could have been said about Daytona.
Well,
and they're two incredibly
that's
different
true.
tracks.
That's true. But I mean, it reminded me a lot of an old school Martinsville race. And by old school, I mean like from my childhood, because obviously it's the oldest track in NASCAR, so I don't know how it was in 1949.
I don't know how the oldest of old school
Right. But I know how it was when I was little and when NASCAR was really popular, and it was a lot like that. There's a lot of beating and banging. Damaged cars ended up finishing high. You know, Stenhouse wrecked.
Yeah.
Logano wrecked. They both finished in the top 10.
And I don't know about this one, but I think this race, more than the rest of them, they emphasized how important it was to watch races all around the track.
Oh yeah, which was awesome, because that's something that they failed to do the last few years, in my opinion. But they really were able to do that. I mean, they were showing battles in like 8th and 9th place with 4 laps to go, which was awesome because Keselowski had run away with it. So I don't want to see him lapping cars, you know.
Yeah.
So a couple of the headlines from the race were obviously Brad Keselowski picking up the win. He's the first repeat winner of the year. Ford's first win at Martinsville since 2004 when Kurt Busch did it in the 97 car.
Interesting.
That's pretty much really the only headline. There wasn't too much that happened as far as, like last week where we had Austin Dillon incidents and stuff like that.
Right.
So other than just the great racing, I mean, there's a fantastic battle for about 50 laps there with Keselowski and Kyle Busch for the win. Chase Elliott was right there the whole time. He had a good finish.
Was there any tire trouble stuff this week, or am I just making that up?
Oh, there was definitely a lot of tire trouble.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily tire troubles. I think it comes down to brake trouble, really.
Yeah, but that's gonna
brakes
that's
overheating
gonna
the tires,
yeah.
right?
That's gonna happen in Martinsville.
So, before we jump into our race recap, I want to go through the winners from all the NASCAR races this week.
Let it rip.
Well, we actually had 2 NASCAR races this week.
Okay, so I mean, just tear it a little bit.
So the Alpha Energy Solutions 250, also at Martinsville, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Chase Elliott won that race. Chris Bell looks like he could have won it and got taken out by a lap car. Chase Elliott ended up taking the lead, then fought off his teammate Johnny Sauter on a late restart, ended up winning the race. And then obviously the STP 500, also at Martinsville in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. As I just mentioned, Brad Keselowski with the win, first repeat winner of the year. Penske's looking strong this year.
Yeah, were you surprised by that at all? Because I am not surprised by Brad Keselowski being the first.
No, I'm not. And Jeff Gordon and Darrell Waltrip were talking a lot about it. They were talking about it, even though he's never won
Martinsville.
a race at Martinsville, he's finished second a couple times. He's been real good there. He's really good at the tracks where there's a lot of deep driving and braking, like Martinsville, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like you said, not only is it not surprising he won at Martinsville, it's not surprising he's the first repeat winner because Penske's been on fire. They've had good speed in all of their cars. I mean, he finished second last week in a wrecked race car, basically, in one of the fastest tracks. So, not surprised at all by him winning. Not surprised by Kyle Busch coming in second with a good race. And I am a little bit surprised, though. What do you think about Chase Elliott coming in third? Because I know that Martinsville is one of the tracks that he considers one of his weaker ones.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week when we heard that he was entering in the truck race. Mm-hmm. Or maybe we talked about off camera. Or off...
It was camera last week.
Yeah,
we're going back to audio only in case you guys haven't noticed.
Yeah. Until we find a good reason to go back to video, until we can find something that we can really bring to video, like with pictures or
the video didn't really add much. So.
Or something else. If we can, if there's something new to add, there's no reason to do video.
Plus, this way we can do the show naked.
You can. I don't think I necessarily will.
Oh my goodness! Everyone just walked in.
Everybody walked in the studio. How's it going? What are we talking about? Throw to me again? Rocco's basement. No,
Chase Elliott.
We're talking about Chase Elliott. I think he was just a little bit insecure because that man wheeled today.
He did. He looked great. I think that the truck race, despite them being such different vehicles, because Darrell Waltrip was talking about how he didn't think the truck race would help all that much because it's so different from the Cup cars. I think it really did help.
Yeah.
He's done it before. He raced the truck race at Martinsville last fall. It didn't help him too much in the race. I don't really remember because I was paying attention to Jeff Gordon. But I do know that...
if anything, it got him into the mindset.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is the confidence. That's the main thing. And the fact that he's just a good driver.
Yeah.
So I think Martinsville is definitely a good driver's track. You don't necessarily have to have the best car.
Yeah, he wheeled all day.
Yeah, he did. So we've gone through first, second, third. Let's go through the rest of everybody.
Oh, you want to
Let's
go
hit the
through entire
rundown.
field.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, we're gonna start with you today, even though you're dying. So I don't know if we'll be able to make it.
We'll see
Let's
if we can make
you
it
break
through
the
the
top
end.
30.
So, we have 38 cars into the race.
All right.
And in
I'm gonna have to move
38th
this
place, unfortunately, was my fantasy pick, Jamie McMurray.
Ooh, didn't work out.
Yeah, he blew a tire early after getting in some contact. Hit the wall pretty hard. Couldn't recover.
What position was that?
38th place.
Okay, and in 37th, it is Kurt Busch. He wrecked twice and didn't make it. And this guy came fault due to the new damage repair rule.
That's right.
Yep.
In the 36th place was Jeffrey Earnhardt. He hit the wall. Pretty sure he blew a tire. I don't remember how he got to the wall, but I know he hit it and ended up having to retire
Yeah,
from the race.
DiBenedetto in 35th did the exact same thing.
He sure did. 34th was Dale Jr. He got involved in that big old wreck. He didn't have that much damage, but the issue was it broke the radiator, and you can't replace parts, and you couldn't really do a radiator in 5 minutes on pit road anyway, so he had to bail out of the race.
Yeah, Timmy Hill finished 33rd. He was great use for a pick. Wow, this is really demeaning for a driver, but he was great use for a pick from Chase Elliott to get around Austin Dillon.
Yeah, and helped him pick up that top 3 finish. 32nd place is going to be my highlighter driver today, which is Daniel Suarez. Ran most of the race without any front body work, but I'll talk more about him in a little bit.
All right, and 31st was Reed Sorensen. He blew a tire and spun early in the race.
Seemed to be pretty much a theme going here with the blown tires and wrecking. 30th place was Denny Hamlin. He had a pretty decent run going all day. He's pretty good at Martinsville, but he ended up wheel hopping into Danica, got in a wreck, and couldn't continue.
All right, Gray Galding came in 29th. He spun out and recovered, was able to manage a top 30 finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great finish, but not bad considering he ended up spinning out early.
Yeah, at least he didn't.
Corey LaJoie finishing 28th. He had a conversation with his dad this week where his dad was saying, you're overdriving the car. The 83 car historically is a 33rd average place finish, so don't try to drive it like a 20th place car. Drive it like a 33rd place car and see what you can get out of it. So he got 5 spots better than his average, best finish of the year. So maybe something turned around for him.
All right, well, Landon Castle and Michael McDowell today both had really pretty good finishes in 27th and 26th, respectively. And we're going to have Ryan Blaney in 25th. He probably had the best car all day, at least early on. Green flag pit stops really hurt him. I feel like we're repeating the same things.
Well, he actually got in a wreck and had to...
Did he?
Well, and the caution didn't come out.
Okay.
He ended up making contact and got a tire rub, had to pit. And if you go 2 laps down at anywhere, you just can't recover from that.
Okay, and in 24th.
24th place was David Reagan. He had a pretty good run going. He had some issues on pit road. Not really sure what happened there. Wasn't too much coverage, but still not a bad finish for him.
Yeah, Danica Patrick in 23rd place also had trouble all day. She punted the 39 car into that melee that was...
Well, it'd be weird if she put in the 39 car because she actually hit the 37 car. There hasn't been a
37
39 car in a few
okay.
years. But she did hit the 37 car, and she's
Rats.
which basically started that whole melee. I don't know whose fault it was.
I wasn't doing so bad on numbers, but
right.
got caught up.
So in 22nd place, Ty Dillon. A little disappointed he didn't finish higher than his brother because I love it when he finishes higher than Austin Dillon. But not a bad run for him today.
Speaking of not bad runs, Cole Witt had an awesome run in 21st place today.
I mean, for Cole Witt, that is an awesome run.
Yeah.
20th place, comparatively, even though he finished higher, a less than awesome run. Kevin Harvick, he didn't have Rodney Childers this week. He's serving his suspension. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think we got some news about that. In 19th place was Paul Menard.
In 18th place was Eric Almirola. Richard Petty was talking this week, said that he feels like they're finally getting some top 10 cars getting cranked out of that shop, so maybe they'll be able to turn around soon.
In 17th place was Kyle Larson. He never had it all day.
Yeah, it's kind of deceiving with him starting on the pole, but it's really just because of the points position.
Yep.
16th place was... I'm not going to do it.
I'm
not going to do it.
All right, I'll do it
gonna...
anyway. The True Flex, the Suplex, the Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah, 16th place was Martin Truex Jr.
No, you'll say it. I'll get you to say it by the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. He won he won stage 1. Ended up coming back, was running top 10 and spun out late, so disappointing day for him.
Alrighty, where are we at? In 15th place is Jimmy Johnson. Still only has 1 top 10 finish, and that was last week, so he wasn't able to do it at the track he has 9 wins at.
Yeah, I'm scared sleeping on Jimmy Johnson, though, because you know he's going to come back and do it. 14th place was Casey Kane. Yeah, had a pretty decent car most of the day. Ran top 10 for a good while there. Ended up 14th, pretty much where he was all day.
Yeah, I feel like I should have to say this, but Trevor Bayne in 13th, he raced his teammate clean this week.
Right, which is interesting that that's news, but after what happened last week, it's kind of interesting to see what was going to happen there, and of course nothing came out of it.
You think your teammate would be the person you race the nicest out there.
Right. In 12th place was Eric Jones. Even though he finished outside the top 10, 12th place was amazing considering the condition of his car. He literally didn't have a right front fender on the car from some crash damage earlier, so awesome to see him get 12th place after that.
And 11th place was Chris Buescher. Both had a great finishes for him and his JTG teammate, who we'll talk about in a quick quick moment.
Yep, 10th place was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I don't know how he ended up 10th. He was on screen all day. He was spinning out. He was beating and banging. Had damage all over his car, but ended up with the top 10. So good for him.
Yeah, coming back from 2 crazy wrecks in a row. Matt Kenseth finishing 19th,
yeah.
9th.
Yeah, good to see him get a top 10 finish after 2 consecutive weeks with real hard hits into the wall. 8th place was Ryan Newman. Kind of disappointing to see that we have a race winner and a top 10 finisher who technically was driving an unsponsored car. I mean, he had the Chevy sponsorship, but I'm pretty sure that was just one of those, like the Ford EcoBoost cars when they can't fill the sponsorship. So disappointing there.
And in 7th place was Clint Boyer. He had made crazy moves all day. He was bonsaiing down in turn 3 at least twice. And, his car was pretty mangled, as we talked about at the top of the show.
And pretty much everyone's were. 6th place was AJ Allmendinger. I just want to say that last week I pretty much called that. I think I said he was going to finish top 5, so I was real close. I definitely said he was going to turn around. Good to see him and his teammate Chris Buescher, 6 and 11.
I think you were on the fence about picking him this week.
Yeah, I was.
Should have made that.
I probably should have rather than picking the last place finisher there, but
Yeah.
you live and you learn, I guess.
Yeah. In 5th place was Austin Dillon in his season best finish. I feel like we shouldn't have to be saying this because he is a quality driver. He should have been way up there early on in today's race and a few weeks ago. And Austin Dillon.
And he'll be able to keep finishing there. He's made the chase last year. I believe we're going to see him in the playoff this year. 4th place was Joey Logano. I don't know how in the world he finished 4th because I feel like he was 2 laps down at a point. I know he was at least 1 lap down. He had a green flag pit stop at a point for damage. The car was all beat to hell. I don't know how in the world he ended up 4th, but he did. So good for him.
Yeah. Chase Elliott in 3rd had that crazy segment to win, which just fell into his favor perfectly.
Oh yeah, that was a great moment.
It's an easy 10 playoff.
And we'll talk about that in the race recap. Definitely. 2nd place was Kyle Busch. Everything's great for him right now. He's finishing off. He's after starting off the year pretty rough. He's had a couple good finishes in a row. He definitely has speed. He had a fantastic battle with our eventual winner for about 20 or 30 laps there with about 50 to go. So it was good short track racing.
I disagree. I don't think he's very happy right now. That's why he's my highlight driver for today. And speaking of the winner, the highlight of the weekend, Brad Keselowski getting his 2nd win of the year, becoming the first repeat winner and his first time catching the grandfather clock here in Martinsville.
Are you surprised that this is his first repeat winner of the year? I mean, I know we touched on it earlier, but there's a lot of strong cars.
No, I would have said either Brad Keselowski or Kyle Busch. Yeah, well, no, Kyle Busch. We're talking about the beginning of the season, before the season started.
Okay,
I thought Kyle Busch should come out really strong. But yeah, I mean, Brad Keselowski, no surprise. He's definitely a front runner for the playoffs this year, even the championship.
Yeah, it'd be hard to pick against him this year. If he can get to Homestead, it'd be hard to pick against him. So, Brad Keselowski, of course, won today. How did he end up getting there? Because if we're going to jump into the race recap...
some crazy studio interference going on.
Yeah, there's some... We have too many people in the studio right now. It's causing a little bit of distraction.
We got it. We're already a quarter of the way through
and unicorns and stuff. But anyway, in the very first pit stop of the day, all 3 Penske cars, and I say 3, obviously there's 2 of them and Ryan Blaney, they all 3 had issues on the first pit stop. Brad Keselowski was speeding, and Joey Logano had the men over the wall too early, and then Ryan Blaney had a lug nut get stuck in the air gun. So all 3 Penske affiliated cars are going to have trouble on that first pit stop. A little bit after that, Ryan Blaney gets into Jimmy Johnson, who gets into Jamie McMurray, which ended up cutting his tire. That's how he eventually ended up getting into the wall. And of course, the end of stage 1. Let's talk about that for a bit. There were a lot of interesting strategies going on. Some guys taking 2 tires. There was a caution with...
they ended up going green with 3 or 4 to go.
Right. So it wasn't a long time before the end of the stage, and obviously in Martinsville it's a short track, the shortest track. So if there's only 4 laps to go, you can do strategy. It doesn't chew up tires too bad. So Martin Truex actually ended up, I think he either went no tires or 2 tires, but he ended up winning stage 1 after not really being up there for most of the stage. So it's interesting to see that strategy there late in the end of stage 1. The end of stage 2 is what I really want to get into because I really, really liked what Stenhouse did there. For those of you who didn't see it, or just to remind you, Stenhouse was at the tail end of the lead lap, and Kyle Busch was trying to put him a lap down for, it was 10 laps. But he wanted to stay on the lead lap so he could, or at least the first car 1 lap down, so he could get the lucky dog and get back on the lead lap. So late in the segment, Kyle Busch got around him, and as they were coming to take the green and white checkered flag, which just sounds weird to say all those colors at once.
It's okay.
When they were coming to the line at the end of the segment, Stenhouse punted him out of the way to stay on the lead lap.
That's crazy. That's the leader we're talking about.
Right. Punted him out of the way, and Chase Elliott ended up scooting by on the inside and winning the segment.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessary.
I think it was.
It was entertaining.
Oh, I think it was totally necessary.
It was okay. If he lets him go, he's not going to get around the 3 car on the outside. The way that it was going down.
Well,
Casey Kane's in the house.
He may or may not have gotten past the 3 car, but Stenhouse didn't know that. And I think what Stenhouse did, he didn't wreck him. He just gave him a little bump, shoved him out of the way, which, as long he didn't even hit him all that hard. He just drove him into the corner and pushed him up high so he could get by on the inside, which is why I really didn't have an issue with what he did. It'd be different if he wrecked the guy, but he just moved him. He was racing for position too. And he ended up finishing 10th, so it ended up paying off for him in the end. So I really don't have that much of an issue with it. I didn't
think about where he finished.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how, I don't want to see lap cars wrecking leaders and stuff like that just to stay on the lead lap. But I feel like what he did wasn't that bad. He just shoved him into the corner a little bit.
No, I mean, if you definitely want to talk about a race that really took advantage of the new stage setup. Yep. This race was the one you show your friend who was on the border.
Right.
Because both of those endings, and even the way that the pacing went out through the entire race, it really helped out. And I think that's what really helped make that intense race that we got at the end with Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch really entertaining.
Yeah, and I don't remember if it's at the end of stage 1 or 2, but Clint Boyer and Ty Dillon were fighting for 10th place. And I can't think of the last time I was watching a fight for 10th place on lap 130 of a 500 race. So yeah, I mean, I think the stages, and we've been saying it every week. I wasn't on board at the beginning, but every single week we have nothing but good things to say about the stages. I haven't seen a single negative yet. Especially since at a place like Martinsville, we had, I want to say, 11 cautions today. So the cautions would have come anyway. It's just interesting to see the extra bit of strategy that the stages added in there. So I'm looking at my notes here. There was a wreck late that ended up causing a lot of issues. Denny Hamlin got in the wall. Yeah, okay. Denny Hamlin got in the wall. Dale Earnhardt Jr. Cracked his radiator. A lot of guys were involved in this one. How did that one get started? Do you remember?
Denny Hamlin?
Yeah.
That would be him...
wheel hopping into
Danica, yeah. And then that caused a bit of a chain reaction that caused Junior to blow his radiator.
Okay. I remember that happening. I have a note here that says Austin Dillon wrecked the field, which I think there was a wreck earlier.
I think you might have just been mad and wrote that.
I might have.
Because he finished 5th, so I don't know unless it happened when I blinked. I
think there was a wreck earlier that ended up happening that Blaney got involved in, which might have been why I was mad about it. But yeah, obviously the biggest thing that happened today, the biggest wreck would be the when the 11 wheel hopped into Danica. Truex spun late, which was unfortunate because he had a pretty good run going. And Kyle Larson, okay, you know what? I actually remember what ended up happening to him because he was running top 5 or 7. He had battery issues.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's happened a few times.
I know. I feel like we've been talking about battery issues a lot this year, which is weird because, I mean, of all the technology that they cram into these cars, I don't know why the batteries are the one things that are failing. I know that, like, some teams... I heard a rumor that Richard Childress Racing wasn't even running alternators at all. They would just put the battery in there and hope it lasted the whole race. Atlanta? Yeah, I think it was Atlanta where I heard about that. But even still, why are we having such issues with the electronics?
I think it's a problem that should have been solved years ago.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Well, and I guess Martinsville's a little bit different because you have things like the brake fans and the. I mean, that's pretty much the only extra thing. But you obviously have the brake fans are working overtime at Martinsville to keep the brakes cool. But still, it's weird that we're seeing all these issues with batteries. But he ended up losing voltage and lost power for some reason, and that's why he ended up slipping back to wherever he finished.
Did we skip over our highlighted drivers?
We did skip over our highlighted drivers. Good call.
Okay.
So let's back up to that.
We're still in the race. I'll let you. You can go first. Talk about Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, so I highlighted Daniel Suarez, which it may seem kind of weird to highlight a 32nd place finisher, but I wanted to just point out the fact that what a crazy weekend he had and how much of a fight he had to go through just to get to the end of this race. You take it all the way back to Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Dave Rogers his crew chief announced that he had to take an indefinite leave for personal reasons. Kind of strange there, especially after Carl Edwards kind of did the same thing in the beginning of the year. Right. But so his crew chief bails on him on Wednesday, which is weird. So he's got the crew chief. I think his name is something Knost. Could be wrong about that. But this is Nationwide Xfinity Series champion crew chief from last year, so he's familiar with him. But it's still, if you have a crew chief switch right there in the middle of the year, he gets to Martinsville and in practice he wrecks his primary car pretty hard enough that there was no doubt that they'd have to go to a backup.
Right.
So they go to a backup. He starts from the back of the field, ends up working his way up through the pack a little bit, gets involved in 2 different wrecks. And the second one was enough. The first one, he just had a tire rub, banged in the fender. He had to pit under green or right as they were coming to green and pull the fender off the tire. He gets back on the track. He's competing again and gets in another wreck. And they ended up just pulling the whole front end of the car off. It was one of those, the old school ones like you used to see before the crash clock rule, where it's just the radiator and the tires and the engine up front in the car. And ended up driving that car to the finish. So, I mean, you got to think of how much this week sucked for him to fight through and get a 32nd place finish. But good for him because he was still running there at the end.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight his teammate here in Kyle Busch, who has, if you just look at stats, he's done really well the past 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. He's just dominated. But he hasn't been able to get it done. And he's had a few bad lucks when it comes down to the end of these
Yeah, that's true.
These stages and then the end of the race. We want to talk about the end of the second stage again, where he's trying to get around these cars, lap them down. Mm-hmm. Even if he's trying to stay behind him, he can't even do that.
Right.
He's just getting pushed around, and then right in the last turn when Stenhouse bumps him up the track just a little bit and gets the 24 through.
Right.
I would like to hear in-car radio on that one. I'm sure we'll hear something about it, but
they actually did play the in-car radio. They said that
he was frustrated.
It took him a long time to play it because they had to edit it a little bit.
Of course.
Because I'm sure the language that he used. But he basically he wasn't too happy about it.
Yeah.
Which is obvious. I wouldn't be happy about it either. But you're right. He seemed to have some trouble finishing things, and it's not even his fault because if you look at his issue at Las Vegas, he was running third when he and Joe Logano had that incident. Ended up finishing in the 20s. Today at the end of segment 2, again not his fault that he just happened to be the leader and Stenhouse happened to not want to go a lap down. So to a degree, it has been a lot about his bad luck. But it is strange that. We're only 6 races in, so I don't want to say it's strange to say that he doesn't have a win, but Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole doesn't have a win.
Yeah.
Which 6 races in, again, small sample size, but if you 6 races in and Kyle
and
Busch,
4 drivers,
right, really 4 drivers, and Daniel Suarez is a rookie, so we'll give him a pass. But Denny Hamlin hadn't found a way to get to victory lane. Matt Kenseth having a really bad year, and Kyle Busch just hadn't seemed to be there at the end of the races.
I definitely thought he'd be able to close it there at the end.
So you thought he was going to be able to hold off the 2 car when they had their battle?
Between those 100 laps, yeah, I thought he would be able to just kind of outman him, give him a nice bump, but fair enough for Brad Keselowski's sake. Those two are 2 fast drivers,
Yeah, I think the big advantage for Keselowski was and Mike Joe was talking about it. Keselowski had a much better long run car, so right on the restarts, Kyle Busch could take the lead or could hang with them, but Keselowski over time would be able to maintain his lap times a lot better, and the race ended up ending on a pretty long green flag run. There wasn't a caution in the last few. It was at least 30 laps or so. So I don't know if he would have been able to hold on to the 2 car. He ended up holding off the 24 car for second. I know Chase Elliott was putting a good run on him for second. And they kind of went away from that battle late with only a few laps to go. But yeah, how long do you think it's going to be till Kyle Busch gets off the Schneid, ends up winning a race?
Well, here's the thing: we got Texas this week. Mm-hmm. He's good at Texas. I'm gonna think Richmond though. I think Richmond might be the one to put him back into the playoffs.
Is Richmond the week after Texas?
Richmond is not the week after Texas. No, I think I'm wrong there. Because I think it's
we'll
Bristol. Well, regardless, whichever one's first, Bristol or Richmond.
You're right. So it's Texas, Bristol, and then Richmond. So you think Richmond could be the one where Kyle Busch gets off?
Right. I think Richmond will be the one where he can get back onto the horse and dominate the way that we've seen him do before.
He does need to get back onto the horse.
Get back onto his horse. Yeah. The horse. Get back onto the horse. That's a phrase.
I think it's just get back on the. No, yeah.
Let's get back on the horse.
I'm so used to calling you out for dumb phrases.
Yeah, it's okay. You've coughed out your brain. We get it. You want to jump out of this and jump back into the news that we were talking about?
Well, pretty much we were done with the race recap. There wasn't other than it was a great race and a lot happened, but there wasn't too much to talk about other than the fact that it was just great racing, a lot of beating and banging. Yeah. There weren't any flared tempers as far as fights on pit road or anything like we sometimes see at Martinsville. Obviously, Kyle Busch wasn't happy with Stenhouse the way that went down. Danica and Chris Buescher had a good long battle where they were beating and banging, which is interesting because Danica and
Buescher.
AJ Allmendinger have had their run-ins before.
Of course.
Yeah. So now you look at
you want to talk about 2 JTG emotional car. Drivers.
Right. Yeah. So now you look at the other JTG Daughtry car, and Chris Buescher getting into it with Danica. Danica kind of just seems to have an issue with a lot of people, though. Yeah. So I don't know if it's so much coincidence or if it's just maybe common denominator there. But that being said, it was just a great race. Great racing all around, beating and banging everything. I'm almost as excited to talk about next week as I was to talk about this week, just because we have a new Texas racetrack. Before we get into next week, I want to talk about one thing that happened this week.
Okay.
Something that we brought up last week.
Before we take our hot dogs to go, we're gonna stay back for one more hot dog.
So before the race weekend this week, Stewart Haas Racing repealed their appeal.
Yep.
Of Rodney Childers' penalty,
which is my new favorite phrase.
Repealing the appeal.
Yeah, repealing the appeal.
That's gonna be my next album.
Oh, your next album, repealing the appeal.
Yeah. But it was something that we talked about last week jokingly, and it kind of seemed to be they weren't even trying to hide it. When you appeal a penalty, obviously you're saying I don't believe you, so we're gonna keep using our crew chief until the appeal process is over. And I was saying,
your thought process was because it was California,
right? He wanted his crew chief because he liked his chances at California better than at Martinsville. And not only did they appeal it, and then it's one thing if you appeal it and then you lose the appeal and he gets suspended. They didn't just lose the appeal. They didn't even bother. They just pulled their appeal after that one race. Yep. So, and this actually goes for not only NASCAR, but if you look at any sport, you see it in baseball all the time. Some guy gets suspended for PEDs, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to appeal it," and he keeps playing until the appeal process goes through. Does something need to be done about that? Because it's kind of like they chose which race he got suspended for.
That I just found that really weird. I think there should be, but I mean, some things are going to need repealing and then appealing appealing then repealing. It's just I don't know what they would do. I can't imagine what they would do because there are situations where you would need to
and we've seen guys win appeals and get to keep their crew chiefs and stuff like that. So we've seen it happen where someone gets penalized, they appeal it, and they win the appeal, or maybe not win the appeal and get the suspension overturned, but they get it reduced.
Yeah. The choosing the race thing that might need to be cut.
That's my issue with it, especially if they planned on repealing it right afterwards. I just like you said, how do you police that?
Yeah, no, it's too tough, and maybe they just won't allow repealing anymore. But I mean, that saves the money. But but if you don't allow repealing, then
well, you could allow appealing.
No.
But once you place the appeal, you can't repeal the appeal.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we figured it out. You're welcome.
All right, Brian France.
You're welcome, Mr. France.
Call me up when you need
when somebody who's just gonna cough on all your work and then tell you just don't do it anymore. You know that rule. You don't do that.
That's what I'm here for.
What do we got? We leaving Martinsville?
Yeah, we can leave Martinsville and move on to Texas. Which brand new, freshly repaved Texas.
Is it fully repaved?
Fully repaved.
Okay.
The track and pit road, which is crazy that they did.
Was it reconfigured too? Slightly.
It was reconfigured. Okay. Turn 1 is now wider and less banking. Turns 1 and 2, but they didn't touch 3 and 4. So not only did they change turns 1 and 2, they didn't match 3 and 4 with the new 1 and 2. So you're gonna have two totally different racetracks on the two ends of it.
I love this because my three least favorite tracks are Charlotte, Atlanta, and Texas because they all blend together.
Right, because this is
I love Atlanta. It's our home track. We've been on between the two of us. We've been every year for a while now.
For 11 for me, yeah.
11 years.
11 years in a row.
Okay, so there you go. Between the two of us, it's been 11 years.
And between me by myself, it's been 11 years.
No, that's not true. You missed the race that Jeff Gordon won.
Oh, I mean, I went to the Busch races that year and stuff.
Oh.
And I went to that race. I just left.
You've been to the track. We've been to the track the past 11 years.
Oh, okay.
I've been there in 2005.
If we're only talking cup races,
I helped out.
It's only been 8 years for me.
All right, well, that's great. Okay.
So the moral of the story
is...
You
can talk about yourself. I'm telling you that we like Atlanta.
We do like Atlanta.
I don't like that there's 3 tracks that are similar, that are so similar.
That they're basically the same.
Yes.
Plus, you have tracks like Kansas and Chicagoland that are and Las Vegas that even though they're slightly different, they still run basically the same as those other 3. So yeah, I agree with you. It's awesome to see Texas doing something to where the track stands out a little bit.
It'll be interesting to see first practice then, to kind of see what the form is.
I've heard crew chiefs and stuff talking about how they're comparing it to Kentucky because it's a real wide, flat track, or even Darlington, which is interesting because they run way, way high up at Darlington. So hopefully turns 1 and 2 have a lot of lanes to choose from. Like I said, they made it wider because obviously if you're going to reduce the banking, it's got to come from somewhere. So they made it a lot wider. The apron is only like a car length wide now in 1 and 2. It goes almost to the inside wall. So I'm really expecting some 5, maybe even 6 wide, restarts and stuff like that. Kind of like what we see at Auto Club and Michigan. So I'm really, really excited. And not only that, but then when they get to 3 and 4, it's totally different.
Yeah.
So it's going to be crazy setting up the cars. 3 and 4 are going to be way fast. It's going to be like we were talking about those other cookie cutter tracks. 1 and 2 is going to be a lot slower, but it's going to be a lot wider. So what do you do? I mean, do you set up for 3 and 4 and then sacrifice 1 and 2? Or do you set up for 1 and 2, sacrifice 3 and 4? Do you try to find a balance between the two of them? So we're going to see a lot of different strategies. New surface means it's going to be fast and grippy. So I don't know. I'm just really excited to get to Texas.
Yeah, I'm excited for the mix-up. So that should be something to look out for. And I don't know. I want to see a sample size now. I want to get that first practice down. Get the second practice down. Let's see who our front runner is, because it could feel like it's a new track.
So with it being a new track, who do you our ignorantly early picks for next week? Who do you think is going to be a front runner? Maybe
You know what?
Winner next
You're
week?
saying people who need to wheel and deal to get around this track. I'm going to pick Joey Logano. I think Joey Logano is a great driver for beginner's luck. And if it feels like a new track, somebody who needs some luck, and somebody who's been good at tracks for his first time coming around now, it should be an interesting appeal for him. And I think people like Kyle Busch, him, and even Jimmy Johnson, our 7-time champion, could be really beneficial to have something new here.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stick with Joey Logano though.
Well, for me, the obvious pick at Texas for me is always Carl Edwards, but I don't think he's going to be winning this week.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to make it out.
I
think he reconfigured his life.
He did. It's just a shame because I really would like to see him on this new track. You look at guys that are good at Kentucky, especially someone who won the first ever Cup race at Kentucky, being Kyle Busch. You can't pick against Kyle Busch. He's had strong cars all year. He's great at Kentucky. He's good at new tracks, such as Kentucky when it first showed up on the schedule. Brad Keselowski is good at flatter tracks, so and he's also good at mile and a half, which is what this new combination is going to be. But I'm actually going to go with maybe more of a dark horse, maybe not at this point. But I think the winners next week is going to be Chase Elliott, because with the new configuration, you almost take experience out of it.
Right.
Because no one has experience on this track in any series. And it's not even like, when we first went to Kentucky and Kyle Busch had been riding there in the Busch Series for 15 years or however long. This is someone that no one's driven on it other than Chris Buescher in a pace car, one lap,
right.
So you take experience out of it, so you don't have to worry about the older guys like Kenseth or Hamlin being like heavy favorites, or Johnson. Plus, Chase Elliott's he's had a ton of speed all year. He's been by far the best Hendrick car. He's way outperforming all three of his teammates, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and especially Casey Kane. I can't wait for Alex Bowman to move.
Never heard of him.
I can't wait for Alex Bowman to drive that 5 car after the end of this year when Casey Kane gets fired. That's neither here nor there.
Connor is staring you down in the studio right now. He is not happy with that Casey Kane rumor.
Casey Kane's the GOAT!
And WrestleMania's on the Connor might give you the stunner before this is over.
We might, because
I do have a question though before we step away from that, or step to something else. Do you think this track has more in line with Kentucky than it does Charlotte, in that sense? Because the way you're talking about and the way you're making your picks, it's making it sound like it's this new Texas configuration has more in line with the Brad Keselowskis and the Kyle Busch style of racing at Kentucky more than Charlotte, like Jimmy Johnson.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
No, and that's a great question because, obviously normally you would look at guys who are good at Atlanta, Charlotte, Kansas, Chicagoland, and Vegas to pick at Texas. But honestly, I think it's going to still be more like a mile and a half than Kentucky, which is a mile and a half. But it's going to be more like the cookie cutter mile and a half than it is the flatter ones. Simply because from the end of turn 2 to the beginning of turn 1, that's still normal old Texas with new pavement.
Right.
You're not going to have to worry as much about tire fall off or slipping and sliding around because it's new pavement. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you have the uniqueness of like Atlanta. And even though I'm comparing a lot to Kentucky, the banking isn't exactly the same. It's still not exactly the same as Kentucky. But that's why I feel like all three of those guys are safe picks, because those are being Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, and Chase Elliott. Those three guys are good at the mile and a halves too. They've been good at Texas. They've been good at Atlanta. They've been good at Charlotte. Chase Elliott's been good everywhere. He's been really good at the mile and a halves. He doesn't have anything to show for Kentucky because he only has one start there. But I still just think that even though it's not your typical mile and a half, you got to look at guys that are good at the mile and a halves. But then you also got to look at guys that are good at adapting to new things, which Chase Elliott has definitely shown he's capable of doing that. So I don't think I can pick against him.
Second question then.
Uh-huh.
If Texas does really well, the fans really like it, the drivers, more importantly, the drivers really like it, and it produces an incredible race, do we see a new configuration on a track like Chicagoland or Kansas?
I would hope so. Phoenix is reconfiguring, not necessarily the track, but they're putting the start and finish line in a different place and pit road in a different place, which changes your whole strategy. Atlanta just canceled their repave because the drivers said they like the old pavement, they like the uniqueness of that. But maybe that's actually a really good question too. Yeah. I could see somewhere that's had dull racing lately get a reconfiguration if the Texas reconfiguration goes well. And every few years you see this. We had 15 years ago or so. Homestead was a big, wide, flat track. It didn't produce fantastic racing. They gave it an extreme reconfiguration, and the racing there has been as good as it's been anywhere across the whole schedule for the last few years. Which other one just went under? Las Vegas, same thing. It was real flat, real wide, but the racing kind of dragged on a little bit. It wasn't quite fast enough. They gave it a reconfiguration, actually pushed it closer to those other mile and a half, but since then the racing's been better. So lots of times you see these reconfigurations that are really successful, especially in the tracks that are all very similar to each other. So I could, if Texas is successful, I can see them doing another one. The only issue is you can't reconfigure unless you're already planning on doing a repave. It's not like you're going to just go out and reconfigure a track that was paved a few years ago. And Kansas isn't very old. Chicagoland, it's never been repaved since it opened, but it opened, like 2004 or something.
What reminded me of that, did we talk about last week the restrictor plates?
Oh, I don't know if we did.
Did we talk about that?
I don't know if we did.
Because that reminds me, because, I mean, it's essentially reconfiguring the track if you change the cars.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And what the story is that they were, I don't know how far this was to be legitimate, but there was a rumor that they wanted to add restrictor plates to tracks like California and Michigan. Or Pocono and Michigan.
I don't know how I feel about that. They are going to do it in the Xfinity Series at Indianapolis this year. They've already confirmed that that's going to happen this year.
I think they should try it.
And depending on how that goes, they might do it next year at Indianapolis for the Cup cars. I don't know if you want to try to turn too many of those tracks into restrictor plate races, because then you're almost... I mean, you're right, Pocono has been kind of bland lately. Indianapolis has been really bland lately, so I'm glad they're trying new things.
Yeah, I think they should try it with Indy. I think Indy is a smart pick, because Indy is such a marketable track.
Right.
And the racing there has been lackluster. Ever since they went there. There's only a handful of races you can pick out that are some really, of the more iconic of the series.
Well, I mean, it wasn't built for stock cars, and it's showing.
Right. So I think adding this could bring that extra entertainment that they really want to go for, and giving it to the Xfinity Series. You got to guinea pig it.
That's what the Xfinity Series is for.
That's what it was. That's what it was built for. And I feel like when we talked about the stage racing, how early it was, that it was crazy that they didn't try it out before they brought it into the Cup Series.
Right.
So I think doing this could be a good idea, and who knows if it's going to be well. So you want to give it to the Xfinity guys, I think. And you said that they're going to do that for sure.
Yeah, it's already been confirmed. They've been trying different aero packages too. They did a 5-car test session where they ran like 10-lap races or something in the Xfinity Series, and Ryan Reed. And I can't remember the other guy that commented on it, but I know Ryan Reed was at the test session, and he loved it. They tried 3 or 4 different packages, all with restrictor plates, and Ryan Reed, the one that they decided to settle on, he said that they were able to all stick together, no one could pull away, and race in these little groups of 5 for these whole shootout races that they had staged for the test session, which is good news for sure, because the racing in Indy, not only in the Cup Series and in the Xfinity Series, has sucked the last couple of years. My only issue is if you try to turn too many of these into your classic Talladega, Daytona, where they run in packs and there's drafting and stuff like that, you're going to end up with what we had in Michigan a couple of years ago when they tried the super high downforce package and the super high drag package.
Right.
And I don't know if there was a single pass for the lead under green flag conditions that whole race.
Right.
That race absolutely sucked. They just ran in a line. No one could pass. So you're definitely it's taking a big risk. Luckily, I think the restrictor plate is a better idea than just high drag by itself. And like I said, Ryan Reed had good things to say about it. I'm going to try it out in the Xfinity Series. And honestly, it's not like the racing in Indy and the Cup Series could get much worse. I don't know if I wanted to go Michigan, California, Pocono.
Yeah,
all those
I don't know
tracks
if you want to overdo it.
Okay, I can see Pocono working.
So if they announce tomorrow that there were going to be 3 races in the Cup Series that have restrictor plates. Now, 3 new races.
3 new ones?
Yeah. Well, what do you think? Well, not what do you think they'd be. What would you want?
Well, obviously Indy, because like I said, it's not getting any worse. maybe even Pocono, because the thing with restrictor plates is it takes a lot of the power away, so it kind of kills your drive off the corner. But there's no drive off the corner in Pocono anyway, because the way you have to have the car geared, it's so big. So I'd say Indy, Pocono, and I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to see one anywhere else.
You got to pick.
If I have to pick a third one,
I'm
okay.
making you pick a third one. They want to boost revenue to get the biggest bang for their buck. They're making you pick 3, Britt.
I would say, because California's had good racing lately. I don't want to mess with that. Michigan, the high downforce package failed. I'd probably say Michigan though, just because if I have to pick a third one, because high downforce didn't work, but low power is different than high downforce, so that might be it. That being said, hopefully they don't do that, because.
Yeah, I definitely want to. We both are in agreement that we want to see him at Indy.
At Indy, yeah. At least to see something. I'm glad they're going to try in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah.
If they get too crazy with it, though, we might end up with the last restrictor plate race that was run in the Cup Series that wasn't on Daytona or Talladega was also the last race, not so coincidentally, that one driver led every single lap. Jeff Burton at New Hampshire in 2000 or maybe 2001.
But at that point, it's like running modified cars out there.
Yeah, and New Hampshire's different because it's a lot smaller.
That's no fun.
And they had to do something because there were 2 deaths at New Hampshire in the year 2000, which is why they put the restrictor plates on there. But I don't know. You can't. The taking away the power has been an issue for the racing lately. That's why they actually brought some power back for the Cup cars and took away the downforce. It makes them slide out and kick around a little bit more. Makes the racing a little bit better. So if you take away the power from too many places from the race cars, it's going to end up. It could end up hurting the racing. That being said, let's do it at Indy because like we've said 100 times, not getting any worse.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think we did it this week.
Yeah, I think
we did it a little bit short, but Martinsville is a short track.
Yeah, short track, short show.
Yeah,
I
think we got it there. You want to wrap it up for us?
Yeah. I don't. What do I say for a wrap up?
Well,
we've only done this like 4 times.
We've only done this 4 times.
I don't know how I've wrapped it up to this point.
You know what? We'll just do it quick. Rocco Shapiro.
Brittany Callister.
This has been the Smoke and Flame Podcast. Overreaction NASCAR. Post-race.
Case the GOAT.
There you go. See you next week at...
Texas. We'll be here.
Well...
I'm not going to Texas.
Well, if you're at Texas, you can watch it. Anyway, gone too long. Goodbye.